It's good to be back. I've been away for a couple weeks. Before this sermon, we're going to be looking at Genesis 39 on page 8. Before the sermon, some of you may know that Pastor Jason, who was here for 5 years, today is the day where he gets officially received at their new church in New Orleans. The official language for that is he gets installed. And it sounds like he's a piece of software or something, so he's a human. So I'm going to say he gets received. So I want to send a video greeting to him that I'm going to have you participate in. And so I figured instead of everybody just saying random things at once, I'll just do 1, 2, 3, and then we'll say, "We love you, Pastor Jason." So let's practice. It's always good to practice. So we love you, Pastor Jason, on 3. 1, 2, 3. We love you, Pastor Jason. I should have filmed that one. That was great. All right, here we go. So let me start this. I'll introduce. Hey, Jason and Foxy, love you guys. Miss you so much. We're gathered here together to worship, and we thought we would send you our greeting. So, 1, 2, 3. We love you, Pastor Jason. We love you too, Foxy. Blessings to y'all. Okay. All right. I hope that worked. All right. Genesis 39. About 4 months ago, true story here, I had a dream. Today is the anniversary of Dr. King's dream. I had a dream, not as important as his dream, but it was pretty important to me. And I don't know, it's one of those things where God gives dreams. I don't know if this was from the Lord. I think it might be, but again, I'm holding that very loosely. And in the dream, I was in heaven, standing before the throne of God. And in my dream, I saw my grandparents, my father's mom and dad. And they were holding hands, which is significant for all kinds of reasons I won't go into now, but I'd never seen them do that in my life, and I could tell that something significant had been restored between them. It was really beautiful and profound. And they were glad to see me, and they blessed me with their words. And then my grandfather said to me, he said, "John, if you see Kenneth," that's what they call my dad in his family, "tell him I'm sorry." And I was just like, okay. I didn't know what to do with that. Again, did this come from the Lord, or did this come from the burrito I had for dinner? I don't know. So I prayed. I felt compelled that I got to share this with my dad. I talked to some people I trust who are wise in these things. And they were like, "Yeah, hold it loosely, but I think you need to tell this to him." So about a week and a half ago, I was in Columbia, South Carolina. I was in the memory care unit of an assisted living facility visiting my dad. That's where he lives now. And because of his dementia, I can't communicate with him on the phone. He doesn't even have a phone in his room. I had to communicate with him in person, so I had to travel across the continent to see him, but I simply had to tell him about my dream. And that's what I did. Now today, we return to the book of Genesis, and we just began the story of Joseph, which is Genesis 37 to 50. It's the last chunk of the book. And if you recall, you probably don't because it was in April, I believe, or early May, Joseph had a dream as well. And that dream shapes the whole Joseph story. Anybody remember what that dream was about, or remember from other Bible studies? It's kind of a weird dream. What's that? The skinny cows, that's a little bit later. Yeah, bowing down. People were going to bow down to Joseph. He was going to rule. He was going to reign. Others were going to bow down to him, his brothers and other people as well. And that dream sends Joseph on a journey. So Joseph tells his brothers about the dream. He wasn't very politically wise, with how he shared his dream. And what did his brothers do? His brothers were like, man, that's great. No, they were like, let's kill him. And they were on the verge of killing him, and one of the brothers is like, man, just think about how guilty we'd be if we kill him. So it wasn't like spare him because we should have, but it was like, boy, think about what kind of trouble we might get into with God or whoever. So what do? They sell him into slavery. Not everybody, and Joseph's dream was from the Lord, not everybody likes God's dream. And that's where we pick up the story in verse 1, chapter 39. Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt from when he was sold into slavery, taken down south. Potiphar, an Egyptian who was one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him there. The Lord was with Joseph so that he prospered, and he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. When his master saw that the Lord was with him and that the Lord gave him success in everything he did, Joseph found favor in his eyes and became his attendant. Potiphar put him in charge of his household, and he entrusted to his care everything he owned. From the time he put him in charge of his household and of all that he owned, the Lord blessed the household of the Egyptian because of Joseph. The blessing of the Lord was on everything that Potiphar had, both in the house and in the field. So Potiphar left everything he had in Joseph's care, and with Joseph in charge, he did not concern himself with anything except the food he ate. So Joseph was like an executive assistant, just the dream. So because of the dream that God gave Joseph, Joseph gets taken to Egypt. He's sold by human traffickers to Potiphar, who is basically the captain of the guard. He was the head of the Egyptian Secret Service. So think of, tough military sort of guy. Potiphar was not a dude that you would want to mess with. I think of Jocko Willink, if any of you know him, former Navy SEAL, now sort of public figure. So that's who Potiphar was. And in the midst of all this, there he is in this strange empire, working for this very powerful man. Verse 2 tells us that the Lord was with Joseph. Even there in the heart of a foreign empire, ruled by allegedly Pharaoh and the gods of Egypt, God was with Joseph. And according to theology of the day, gods only had power in their countries. And so God wasn't supposed to have power there, but this is saying, no. Even in a place controlled by Egypt and their gods, the Lord was there. He had power. And what does God's presence bring? It brings blessing. Joseph prospered in everything that he did. And Potiphar, we don't know. Maybe it's because Joseph was successful and the Lord gave him success. Maybe there was something about Joseph that Potiphar was like, man, you're different. I've had a lot of people work for me, some of them good, some of them bad, but there is some kind of X factor you have. So we don't know. We just know that Potiphar picked up on the fact that God was with Joseph, so he promotes Joseph. And through Joseph, the blessing of God comes to Potiphar. Life is so good for him right now. He is just racking up the wins. He gets more and more responsibility. He's not one of those people that's like, oh, my job is so boring, it's shrinking, da-da-da-da-da. He's like, no, it's interesting. He has meaning. He is bringing a change. He's getting more responsibility and more respect. So things are amazing right now. And perhaps more importantly, in the flow of the book of Genesis, the promise to Abraham is coming true. What did God say to Abraham? I'm going to bless you so that all the nations will be blessed. I'm going to bless you, and that blessing is going to be so vast and so overflowing. It's not just enough for you, but it's enough for the people around you, even in Egypt, even to the ends of the earth. And there Joseph is working for Potiphar. Saying, man, these people don't know Yahweh. But his blessing is coming to them. And Joseph's dream is coming true. He's beginning to rule. He's beginning to reign over things. So man, this is a great moment in Joseph's life. You imagine I don't know how old he was, maybe in his 20s. He's just kind of thinking, man, following God is pretty dang cool. All this stuff, all the promises are coming true. But remember, God's dream, not everybody loves it. Verse 6, second half of verse 6. Now Joseph was well built and handsome. And after a while, his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said, "Come to bed with me." Now, we're never given her name. I'm just going to call her Potiphar's wife because that's how we identify her. But she's probably used to getting her way. But he refused. Joseph refused. With me in charge, he told her, "My master does not concern himself with anything in the house. Everything he owns, he has entrusted to my care." Verse 9, "No one is greater in this house than I am. My master has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" And though she spoke to Joseph day after day, he refused to go to bed with her or even be with her. So Potiphar's wife objectifies Joseph. He's the exotic, handsome, young, well-built foreigner. Just the text kind of makes you your imagination run wild. But Joseph consistently, not just once, not after one too many glasses of wine, but consistently she's pursuing him. And he consistently refuses her. And notice how he frames his refusal. It is basically love of neighbor and love of God. He says, think about how much your husband has entrusted me with. And for me to sleep with you would be such a profound betrayal of him, this man who has been nothing but kind to me. So I'm not going to do it. And then he says, it's a wicked thing. And wicked is one of those words that's kind of elevated. It's not just, I shouldn't have done that, mistakes were made. It's not that, it's wicked. This would be an act of wickedness against God. Because Joseph is like, remember the promises of God, and I'm living into these promises, and God's promises are coming true, and now I'm just going to drive the car into a tree. That would be a wicked sin against God as well. So Joseph is faithful to the Lord and to Potiphar. And although Joseph is in the belly of the beast, he is in the heart of empire in Egypt. His life is hidden with the Lord. So what happens? Does she say, "Oh, okay, you're so right. You are the voice of God here. What was I thinking?" More success for Joseph? More wins at work? No. Sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes faithfulness to the Lord results in your life falling apart. Verses 11 through 18. One day, Joseph went into the house to attend his duties, and none of the household servants was inside. She caught him by his cloak and said, "Come to bed with me." So she stepped up the pursuit here. But he left his cloak in her hand and ran out of the house. When she saw that he had left his cloak in her hand and had run out of the house, she called her household servants. "Look," she said to them, "this Hebrew has been brought to make sport of us. He came in here to sleep with me, but I screamed. When he heard me scream for help, he left his cloak beside me and ran out of the house." She kept his cloak beside her until his master came home. Then she told him, her husband, this story. "That Hebrew slave you brought us came to me to make sport of me, but as soon as I screamed for help, he left his cloak beside me and ran out of the house." Now, this is not Potiphar's wife's first rodeo at lying and manipulation. I'm just going to wager that. She's good at this. She objectifies the foreigner, this Hebrew, not Joseph, this Hebrew, this foreigner who's very different than us and is a threat to our way of life. when she's talking to the servants, notice what she says. He was brought here to make sport of us. We're all in this together. I'm one of you. I'm a woman of the people. But when she's talking to her husband, she says, Joseph was brought here to make sport of me. I'm the real victim here. Have mercy, have pity. Don't you love your wife? So that's what she does. She manipulates. She's ruthless in her lying. Now, verse 19 and 20. When his master heard the story, his wife told him, saying, "This is how your slave treated me." He burned with anger. Joseph's master took him and put him in prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. Now, I don't have a picture of an Egyptian prison, but I do have a picture of a 19th century English prison. I believe it's next. Yep, there it is. This is in Merseyside, which is in kind of northwest England. And there's a little bucket there, a little metal bucket, which has toilet written on it. This is probably an upgrade to where Joseph was. If you had prison points, you could probably upgrade to this. He was probably staying in a worse place for this. This is where the king's prisoners were held, where the political, the not friends of the empire were held. And here's what's interesting. This is an honor-shame culture. So if Joseph tried to sleep with his wife, what would you expect to happen to Joseph? Yeah, his head would be way away from his body at some point. But Potiphar sends Joseph to prison. So sometimes God's mercy is prison. You know, God kept Joseph alive. And you think about it, at that point, if you're Joseph, you were just killing it at work. You had the dream life. And then the next thing you know, you're forgotten in some dungeon somewhere. Your colleagues, they don't even know your name anymore. Later in the stories, everybody forgets about him. His family thinks he's dead. You're like, okay, that's the end of my life. But that's not the end of Joseph's life. It's not the end of his story. Picking up in second half of verse 20 to verse 23. But while Joseph was there in the prison, the Lord was with him. The Lord showed him kindness and granted him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. So the warden put Joseph in charge of all those held in prison, and he was made responsible for all that was done there. The warden paid no attention to anything under Joseph's care because the Lord was with Joseph and gave him success, whatever he did. The Lord was with Joseph again. Emmanuel, God with us, was with Joseph when he was on the mountaintop, when he was not just the assistant to the regional manager, but the assistant regional manager. And that same Emmanuel was still with Joseph when he was at the very bottom, in the very basement dungeon prison. And remember, God's dream for Joseph? What was God's dream for Joseph? That he would rule. Yeah. And he's ruling in prison. You know why he's ruling in prison? Because God's dream cannot be stopped. If they sent Joseph to the bottom of the ocean, he would be ruling at the bottom of the ocean. God would have figured out a way for him to breathe underwater, and he would have been ruling at the bottom of the ocean because God's dream cannot be stopped. It cannot be thwarted, no matter what empire does to it, no matter what powerful people do to try to stop it. It's being sinned against didn't stop God's dream happening for Joseph. Even his own sins didn't stop God's dream from coming to fruition. Now, to be a Christian, to be a follower of Jesus, means, like Joseph, we're bearers of God's dream. He's given that dream to us. And there are many aspects of God's dream for us as Christians, but one of them is the same as the dream for Joseph, and that is we shall rule. And you're like, that kind of sounds sort of prosperity gospel-y to me. And I don't like that. But I'm saying, okay, what does the scripture say? Revelation 5:10, and the grammar of this is a little bit weird. This is somebody speaking to the Lord about the people of God. Revelation 5:10, you have made them, God, you have made them, you have made us, the people of God, to be a kingdom and priests to serve our God, and they, us, the people of God, will reign on the earth. That's what it means to be an image bearer, to partner with God, to partner in extending the reign of God throughout the whole earth. And that is God's dream for his people. And God's dream will not be defeated. Nothing can stop God from realizing this dream. Not the lies of wicked and powerful people, not being profoundly betrayed and being sinned against, not profoundly sinning and betraying others, not being violently and suddenly uprooted from a life where everything was going so amazing. God will fulfill his dream for you and in you. That's what this text teaches us. So let me conclude. Back to my dad. My dream led me on a journey. I felt compelled by God to share my grandfather's words with my father. And it was some of the most profound news that my father had ever heard. And I don't even know if my dad was able to comprehend it. He is that so far gone in dementia. I told him that, and he just looked at me blankly, and then we went on to the next topic. If you've ever loved anybody with dementia, that's kind of how it goes. But I told him anyway. But I know this. I don't know if this dream was from the Lord. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I'm holding it loosely. If the dream I had was from the Lord, it will come true. One day, my dad will be able to hear those words, and they will have a profound impact upon him, because nothing will be able to stop the Lord in his dream. Let me pray for us. Father, you are good. We bless you. Fill us with your Spirit that we may believe, no matter where we are, the mountaintop or the dungeon or somewhere in between, that we're not alone, that we just need to look up and know that you are already here with us. Bless us, Lord, as we seek to take the next step forward. I pray this in your name. Amen.